Well, hello, wonderful people. I'm Jim McDermott. I'm the student here at North Central University. This is my second class. Pardon me, I'm trying to get my bearings here. The class is Building Organizational Capacity. The professor for this class is Dr. Dwayne Benton. He has an EDD. And it's August 12th, 2016. I decided to do my video on something that I was familiar with as I was looking for ideas on how to put this together. And what I put together here, or what I'm going to go over here with you during the video, is a case study called What's My Culture? And I've had a lot of fun with it, working with students, working with groups as a facilitator. And as we discuss these different scenarios and then talk about the organizational cultures that might be the better fit. For example, the first one we're going to talk about is, and I'm going to be reading it here, so pardon for me looking down. Joe Powers, he's a personal director for ABC Company. The primary job of his department is to make sure that all procedures are followed as ordered by top management. All procedures are written down in great detail. Employees are obliged to write reports confirming that they have followed all procedures correctly. So as you can see, there is not a whole lot of room with this first organization we're looking at. What I have here in my notes, taken from my lecture notes over the years, is it's definitely a fragmented culture. The employees at an organization like this will be people who work at the organization and not for the organization. Think about that. I mean, it has a huge impact, and the makeup and the what stimulates motivation, etc. It says here in my notes, there's very little trust among employees. Including top management, but there's probably a very competitive environment, a very stressful environment, a very dog-eat-dog or individualist type of mentality going on in this organization. But it does have some values. And some of the values that were discussed in my notes were conformity, obedience, and adherence to rules. Now, as I discussed with my clients and students, this might sound like an organization many people would not want to work for. But at the same time, when we look, I think back to my days in the military, it was a very top-down. And when you're told to, and I'm being very, I'm using a very simplistic term here, when you're told to go take that hill, and it's not the time in the military to say, well, let's sit down as a group, let's do some process action team type work, and let's make a determination. No, when it's the strategic planning has already been done, the tactical planning has been planned out, and now it's time for the operations plan to be put in full effect. There's not going to be any changing going on. It's a top down. You do it or you go to. I've been in the military again, not to. I hate to scare people sometimes, but it is oftentimes McGregor's theory X mentality is often employed. So a lot of time coercion may even be used. So with that, you can see conformity, obedience, and adherence. So I mean, when you need that type, I'll give you something like the DoD, where they might be working with disposal of bombs. Well, this is a time where risk taking and going out of the box may not be the best idea. Maybe following the policies, following the guides that are put in place to ensure your safety and your team around you. So you can see, my point being is that there you can see some of the values. I want to make sure I get some credit there. But for the most part, I would say that would be an environment that could have some burnout. That's definitely an opinion here that I'm sharing from my years in the military. Okay, the next one, Keith Kelly, the next example here in the case study. Keith loves being the chief executive officer of the company. He founded the company several years ago. He's committed to high levels of rapid growth, highly charismatic, He trusts his gut when he's making decisions. And he makes an attempt to ensure he's involved in virtually everything that's going on with the business. So a little sense of micromanagement going on there. After all, it's his company, and he does know best, according to him. So I looked at this, and as was brought up, and I'm going to again be using a lot of my notes here I have in front of me. One of the reading assignments we had this week was using the organizational cultural assessment and as a tool for team development. And in it, it talked about the hierarchical culture, and how Viva, their surveys and their analysis that they went through that was identified in that study, they saw a definite trend in that way. Well, I see it also with Keith. I see that trend coming to light here, a very hierarchical culture. With him, being the boss, you're the king. It's the predominant culture. I'm in charge of this. Is my baby. This is my company. So, regardless of him being charismatic, which sometimes can win the day, he still micromanages the process. And as I tell my students, and as I tell my people who come to me for career advice, I tell them, look at the cultures, make sure it's going to be a good fit. Because somebody's charismatic doesn't mean the culture is going to be resembling his charismatic ways. As we can see here, also that makes up the total person. He's a micromanager. You can see again that some people would work for him and it would grow old after for most it would grow old after a while. Not to bore you with too many of my experiences, but I had an experience where I was brought in as a risk manager for a private company. And after 6 weeks, I just resigned. And here's why. Here's one of the main reasons. It was dealing with the upper leadership. Now, again, I wasn't in the military any longer, but I was working with a military unit, and they had a retired commander that was in charge of this particular area. And it was his way or the highway. Talking with his secretary one time about getting things done, she goes, we'll have to check with so-and-so. You have to check with this leader. And I said, what we need to get done is to ensure that this is done for the troops. She goes, well, we're not here for the troops. And I'm like, well, then who are we here for? And she had been, I want to say her whole self was in a belief system that the hierarchy, the top-down mentality that kind of crimps in here again when you have to have your hand in everything and micromanage it. She said we're there for the guy who was the leader. He's the reason we're there. That's who we work for, and that really disturbed me when I brought it up. I was found some more negative remarks, and I was just like, I think I made a mistake. I should have done a better job investigating the culture before getting involved in the culture. Because now I just made a lot of people mad because I'm walking away and going in another direction. And my wife is like, will he ever get a job? Okay. The next one is about Vicki Smith. Let me talk to you a little bit, and these are fictitious names, of course, in these case studies. She enjoys working at XYZ Corp. All the bosses and other employees are her friends. Isn't that great? Everybody is so polite, and confrontation is frowned upon. When she was ill, everyone covered for her. That's excellent. She doesn't have to worry about being criticized, even if her performance is off a little now and then. Better yet, she doesn't feel pressure to show initiative and figure out new ways to do things. Everybody knows what to do. Oh my God, you would be shocked. How many of my students, when I put this out for an assignment, pick this is the organization they want to be a part of. And I said, now, I said, take off your hats, for many of my students are young students, unlike you, Dr. Benton, who has the older, more mature age student and students. But I have a lot of young 18, 19, sometimes even 17-year-old students. And they just think this sounds wonderful. And I have to remind them, they're not coming to college to become the employee. They're coming to college to become the managers and leaders of organizations. I said, there's nothing wrong with having you have enough people who are trained to ensure a job gets done when a coworker needs time, and whether it be for physical or mental health reasons or life. But let's see what I got here in the notes. No pressure for performance, red flag. Innovation doesn't seem to be highly valued for me as a manager looking at an organization, red flag. In fact, it seems to have a slacker attitude. To remain on the payroll, you show up, hang out with your buddies, say nice things to them, build up their egos a little bit, and you have job security. Maslow would be in effect here when it comes to job security side of his triangle, and it seems to be very, very secure here, just viva friendliness. Again, looking at the values, you have to look for the values of all these organizations to do a pro and cons. There is the compassion. I love the compassion. The concern, the lifelong employment. But we're not looking at Uchi's type A and J and coming up with, what was his XYZ, right? Theory Z for Uchi. I don't think even Uchi was referring to lifetime employment, being that the Japanese highlights were not being, what's the word I want to use? I had it down here. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Gosh, I hate it when you can't find a word, but kind of allowing people to become, there it is, the word came into my mind, slackers. I doubt that he was talking about that and the lifetime employment type of mentality that was under type J in his overall concept of theory Z. Okay, next thing I want to jump on is, let's see here, we did Vicky. Let's look at Heather. Heather is really excited about a new job. She's young, but knows that she'll be promoted if she's productive and responsive in to the marketplace. She's been looking for a long time for a place where she'll be rewarded based on performance, not on seniority. Heather was and has always enjoyed being the winner. She is certain that she will be in this case. Now another thing I talk about when I'm talking about the culture, again, I see a little bit of in this particular case, I see a little bit of the mercenary, which again has some similarities to my military background. But in particular, what I want to talk about with Heather is it's a type of organization where, again, we go back to the dog eat dog. It's more about not so much about being friendly. It's about what can I produce, what can I do to promote self. That's what I'm seeing going on here, and you can see for her in particular, as let's say she's a recent NCU grad from undergrad, she's not going to be choosing an organization with a union, because that culture won't fit for her, because there is in a heavily unionized, and I've worked for the Anchorage School District. I worked with unions, and I worked with, of course, on the management teams. But guess what? Even within the Anchorage School District, as a manager, I had a union. So it kind of that culture was definitely not going to be a fit for Heather. And these are the things that I always, when I'm talking with people, is for them to make sure they have a good understanding. So it's not just what's important, for the organization that I look at. It's also what is important for the people who are deciding to go into an organization, is what I often have looked at. Now, pulling myself out of that and being more from the organizational standpoint, if I was an organization, let's say like UPS, which is heavily unionized, I would say, after talking with Heather and asking her a few questions, I would get the sense, oh, this may not be a good fit for her. Now, if I was FedEx, I'd be like, holy cow, we have found someone who might be a really good fit. I mean, she's looking for a place reward based on performance, not seniority. She likes being the winner, right? So she wants to be that employee of the month every month. So she's a go-getter, a Type A personality, and she might be she might find, let's say, working in a bureaucratic environment, she might find that to be something something very that culture would be very difficult for her. And for that culture of hiring, she might not be the best fit, unless, and I've seen this like when we talk about total quality management, where a department supervisor within a bureaucratic organization comes in and he or she has TQM tendencies. Well, then they could open up, at least for their term while they're there, they open up that portion of the organization to much more of a competitive environment where people are, what's the word I'm looking for? Not entrepreneur, but entrepreneurial type of mindset is highly, um, I would say, something that's accepted and something that's supported. Now, unfortunately, though, when that individual who is the manager or leader leaves, oftentimes like the hand, the fist in the water, bucket of water, you pull that fist out, the water, everything goes back to the way it was. So the people that are there may find themselves back working for somebody very bureaucratic, and the overall culture then brings everything else back in line from that department. Okay, and I like this one. So let me wrap it up with this one. Peter has a little difficulty explaining his new job to his parents. Um, one of his parents is a teacher, the other one is in the military. His job is to develop ideas for a company, to be creative and to make mistakes. Interesting. He has been told if he doesn't take risks and make mistakes, he is obviously underperforming. Just keep the ideas coming, young man, and if they are good, we'll make them work. I love that. So this culture, is obviously putting a lot of emphasis on. I just talked about entrepreneur and entrepreneurial, definitely on the entrepreneurial and entrepreneurial mindset. Highly acceptable to adaptability, to creativity, to innovation. For Jim McDermott, this would be the mecca of the type of an organization I would want to work in. It appears to be very tolerant, flexible, as long as the people are producing, and the right individual. This is a great workplace, and of course, the organization finding the right people is another part of their HR process that's extremely important. I can see where HR has to be married in with all of the, as a staff department, it needs to be heavily in line with all the needs of the organization, not just the job specifications, but the strategy of the organization, and understanding their leader needs to understand the culture, the leader of the HRM, understand the cultural desires of the organization to ensure the good fit. And if they don't have that, then we'll be getting square pegs to try to fit those round circles, leading to a little bit of chaos in an organization. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. It was a lot of fun for me putting it together, and I'll be putting together a reference page. The reference page, this assignment to me was difficult because it was a little bit fractured, which fragmented, I talked about earlier. A little bit, it seems to be a little bit fragmented or fractured as far as an assignment goes, but I enjoyed it, and I'm going to have one reference page which will cover everything I did from 10 questions, to putting together a description of a job, to putting together this video, and I hope that's acceptable. Again, thank you. I'm Jim McDermott, and it has been my pleasure to put together this video for you.